Today's special Tuesday edition of the Daily Fantasy Basketball Podcast is brought to you by No Halftime. No Halftime is an iTunes app that allows you to compete in player versus player daily fantasy sports contest. Use the promo code BBALL for a free $25. That's BBALL, BBALL, for a free $25. That's No Halftime, where the fantasy sports season never takes a break. And with that, we are off and running. Welcome, guys, to a Tuesday episode. Some of you may have noticed that we didn't have a show yesterday due to what I think was a very boring Super Bowl. So we are back giving you a show for Tuesday, and I am Daniel Green. Joining me as always is Mark Roberts. Mark, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad. You didn't like the Super Bowl, huh?
It was just complete boredom for me. Like, I was shocked I didn't fall asleep during it. What about you?
Is that different than most Super Bowls? Like, are you usually like having a good time during the Super Bowl and this one was just particularly boring, or is that just kind of normal Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just thought the whole thing was just like nothing really excited me from like the beginning of the game. Like there wasn't really even like one play besides like the early Von Miller sack and fumble that I kind of like even remotely like moved off my couch. It just I'm kind of blah.
I think I'm not a sophisticated enough football fan to have enjoyed yesterday's game. Like, I think Denver probably has like a really good defense, and that's something to be appreciated. But as just like a casual observer, I don't think I'm smart enough to like have enjoyed how good they are.
Yeah,
that happens in basketball, and I don't really want to talk too much about football just because the Super Bowl has been. I think people log into this podcast to hear not about the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but like there'll be some basketball games where I can totally appreciate what's going on, like the genius that is happening. I feel like when it's like a defensive matchup and it's like a 71-74 battle, and I feel like a casual fan would just be bored out of their minds. You know what I mean? So that may very well have been what was happening yesterday, but for me as a casual fan, I kind of was the same thing. There wasn't a lot of excitement to it. I think it was because I didn't know totally what was going on.
But also though, like, I mean, when you're watching those games, you want, like any games, you for the most part you want to see offense, and there was just no offense. It was completely dominated by Denver's defense. So, you want to see a little bit of offense. And God, Peyton Manning, like, I do not think he should get a ring for that performance. It was so bad.
That's a little harsh.
I mean, or I think I tweeted out a picture of the ring. I think that he should get if they do give him a ring.
The only Super Bowl question I want to hear is, what was your favorite Super Bowl commercial?
Dude, I didn't like any of them. And this is the big problem for me. And I think I tweeted about this during it as well.
You're sort of a Debbie Downer from this whole thing.
Well, no, and like I was exhausted from watching the Super Bowl because I had to restrain my dog. So he watches TV, but I don't even know if he likes the TV. Now he knows that whenever the TV's on, there's going to be animals coming on the screen and like attacking him or something. So like every time there's a commercial with an animal, it doesn't even have to be a dog, like anything that even or looks like an animal. It can be like a Smurf. It can be anything like that's not human.
Any non-human.
What's that?
Any non-human.
Yes, he flips out. And if you were paying attention, actually, like, and I started tracking this at one point, it was like 4 out of every 10 commercials had some type of dog or animal or something that some non-human entity or form. So it was like, and then whenever one of those commercials comes on, he just loses it. So it was just, man, like, and I can't be the only one.
That's really interesting because my dog is totally unaware of the TV, like incapable, like it will be on and it will be a dog, and it's like she can't even see that the TV is happening.
Yeah, see, I wonder if that's like, well, see, I live in a New York City apartment, right? So it's kind of hard not to notice the TV. Where I'm sure you have a nice, this glorious, large house. Your dog
no, no matter what, like mirrors, TVs, computer screens, iPods, anything, like it's like her eyes can't see two-dimensionally or something. Huh. It's really strange. Except for, have you ever watched At Midnight?
No.
Basically a comedy game show where the contestants ring in. It's on Comedy Central, and it's not really a game show, but they kind of are making fun of I don't know if they are making fun of game shows, but it's a game show format. Anyway, there's a bell that rings when they ring in, like at Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And she thinks it's the doorbell every single time and just goes bananas. So we've had to quit watching that show.
Yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, and that's true. Like, you had to quit watching. So like my viewing habits have completely changed due to my dog. Like, there's certain shows that I just will stop. I stopped watching because of my dog. And I'm always on edge. I always have the remote, ready for me. Let's say my dog's sleeping. I am always prepared to mute any show, movie that comes on. If I see some type of animal entering the screen, if I can like mute it. If my dog's asleep, if I can mute it before that animal makes a noise, I got a chance.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, I like the avocado commercial to begin, where they're like the aliens are walking around and they're talking about the 21st century torture device, which is the airplane, which is definitely true. And yeah, they got Scott Baio, and they've got. I thought that was funny.
That one was fun. Yeah, that one was okay. I thought the Marilyn Monroe one was kind of funny, just because that was kind of funny. Because I like that one actor. Who
I thought it was kind of impressive. I don't know how they pulled that one off. I guess just for impressiveness sake, I was impressed with that they pulled off the Cindy Crawford one. I guess that was present day Cindy Crawford.
I didn't even see that one.
Yeah, you should look that one up. So you know the famous Cindy Crawford ad, right?
Yes,
from 25 years ago. So they recreated it. Maybe that was after the Super Bowl. Anyway, James Corden did it, the CBS late night host.
I hate that guy.
Anyway, so the point of the commercial is that he gets out of he's in the car as well because he's with Cindy Crawford, but they recreated the whole commercial, and I'm pretty sure it's present day Cindy Crawford, and I actually couldn't tell. My wife and I were both watching. We couldn't tell that it was present day Cindy Crawford. We thought it was like 25 years ago Cindy Crawford. So I thought that was impressive. My other favorite commercial was the Doritos one with the ultrasound.
Hold on, Mark. Something's happening over here. Something is happening. Can you hear that or not? And my sound effects are the worst.
Sound effects. Honestly, you got to stop with the sound effects.
I googled so like some breaking news just came in for basketball. So I wanted a gong sound effect. So I just googled in gong sound effect, and that's what it gave me. That's the worst dang gong ever.
We're gonna have to ban you from ever using sound effects again.
No, you have to admit, I did one that was funny. Remember I did the Seinfeld one at the end of our 4-hour draft, where I think like only 2 people caught it. That one was funny.
Let me finish my point, and then you can break our news.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, the Doritos one with the ultrasound machine, where the
baby.
Yeah,
that was funny. Yes. Yeah.
You don't have to be such a Debbie Downer, man. There was a few good things.
Why was I Debbie Downer? Oh.
You hated the Super Bowl. You hated every commercial in the Super Bowl.
Well, no, I was just exhausted because of my dog. And you have to admit, like back in the day, like every year there were like 4 or 5 commercials that were awesome, like groundbreaking. Now it's like you can see the commercials on like YouTube even before the game.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like the dunk contest now.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Where if you compare present day dunks to 20 years ago dunks, you're like, wow, today's dunks are better. But in the moment, it seemed like those dunks were good at the time. I feel like the commercials are that way. Like the Frogs commercial, right, was like the biggest deal ever, and the Clydesdales. And I feel like nowadays those commercials wouldn't even get noticed.
I totally agree. I'm with you.
And it's just a different. I just feel like I don't know. People have a hard time appreciating things when they happen. Anyway, breaking news.
Breaking news, Mark.
4 hours ago, because this is a podcast.
Oh, that's true. That's actually well, it's breaking news for us. It's breaking news
to me.
At 10:47 Eastern Time on Monday night, Mark Stein has reported that the Kings, according to sources, are expected to fire coach George Karl in the coming days.
Wow, number 6.
Yeah, so that'll be the 6th NBA coach, and we'll get to another one, Derek Fisher, in a couple minutes. So. I mean, there've been rumblings about George Karl and the Kings even before the season began, and then after, like, they've been getting just destroyed the last 4 or 5 games. Teams are putting up like 700 points against them. I think Boston like legitimately had 46, 48 points in the first quarter against them over the weekend, they've been a disaster. Clearly, they're not playing, with a ton of energy or ton of effort. So, not completely unexpected at all. Any thoughts? No thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think about how to. So I was thinking about this earlier today because I knew we were going to talk about it.
Oh, before I say that,
Yeah.
I found this interesting. I didn't even know this guy was an assistant coach. I always find it humorous when like a former player, who I find out was now an assistant coach, Corliss Williamson, expected to replace. Wasn't his name Big Nasty when he was on Arkansas?
Yeah. And in the NBA, I think he wasn't he in the trade that sent White Chocolate to the Grizzlies? I think he was. I think it was Corliss Williamson and Jason Williams for Mike Bibby and Sharif Abdul-Rahim.
Well, that's impressive. I'm not even sure of that. I just remember him. I'm so old. I remember him back in college when he was Big Nasty, and I hated that guy. He was fierce.
So with George Karl, so like obviously things haven't been going well in Sacramento. Like it seems like maybe the team has given up on George Karl or given up on something. So I can understand making a move from that standpoint of just like, we've got to do something different because we're giving up 120 to 130 points every night. At the same time, I don't think anybody thinks George Karl is necessarily the problem in Sacramento. And you kind of wonder like, okay, they're starting over again for the how manyth time in a row. Like they had Mike Malone.
How many coaches has Boogie had in his?
Honestly, I think this is number 7. I could be wrong on that, but I remember hearing it the other day. I think it was 5 or 6. So I think he's
had like 3 GMs and like 6 coaches now in 5 years.
And how many point guards? So you're hitting the reset button again. I feel like, don't you only hit the reset button on a coach like George Karl, who's at least a professional, competent coach, if you have somebody lined up? And I guarantee you, Sacramento doesn't have somebody better lined up. So it very feasibly could be that they come out of this with a worse coach, and then they have to hit the reset button again. So I guess my main thing is they need to get problems figured out, like with Vlade and ownership and the front office. And then if the coach is the problem at that point, then figure out the coach and start over. But you just can't keep hitting the reset button on DeMarcus Cousins' tenure in Sacramento, or eventually he's just going to force his way out of there.
Yeah.
So like, I don't disagree that he hasn't done a great job there, but I don't know. I think that there's some cost to hitting the reset button over and over and over. And unless you've got a guy lined up, I don't know why you do it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you have a couple different things going on here. I mean, one, you have an owner who's a buffoon, to put it, I guess in a nice way for me, because I think less of him than that. I think that's being mean to buffoons. But I think also you have an owner and management who have unrealistic expectations. If you look at that roster, they have some talent, but I don't think it meshes, fits well to get together at all.
Right.
So, with that said, I think George Karl was a horrific hire to begin with. He just all these guys, these older coaches who are still getting jobs in a modern NBA that's completely evolved to the time when George Karl, was coaching Sean Kemp and Gary Payton back in his, in his Seattle days. It's just a different game now. Like, I thought he was a horrendous hire to begin with. So,
and I actually expected him to be able to fit in with this sort of a concept, because he ran a lot of the same, like, he was way ahead of his time in Seattle.
True.
They had Sean Kemp as basically the big man, and they put Sam Perkins out on the 3-point line a lot of the times.
Yeah, but I was just there. I think it's just more like dealing with today's modern player.
Yeah.
Today's modern player, they don't want that disciplinarian anymore. And if you look around the NBA, besides Popovich, what other coaches really doing that? I mean, kind of all teams who are successful kind of went away from that for the most part. I feel it could be.
Yeah, well, and there's no evidence that he's had a good relationship with the main players on that team.
Oh, there's evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, these guys are like arch enemies at least at different points during the year.
But
So
it's just like what, like, okay, so I get, like I said, I can understand getting rid of George Karl, I guess, but like, what are you gonna do now? You're gonna start over mid-season, so now you've got to give this new guy the rest of the season, and then you're gonna have a coaching search, and then you're gonna bring somebody else new in, and then like it just feels like you're rinse and repeat, kind of, right? Like
no,
over
absolutely.
and over and over.
No, I mean they clearly have no plan in place. Which is for the organization probably one of the worst things you can do is have no plan, no direction, no order, no competency. It's just a complete disaster. So spending that in terms of fantasy, do you expect anything to change fantasy wise, or do you still expect them to be, a debacle defensively? So it's a team that you attack, in DFS and season long, for that matter. And then on the offensive end, they have guys who are putting up nice numbers. It's kind of
I mean,
numbers that are meaningless.
yeah. So the first question is, do you expect the defense to turn around?
I mean, no,
They
I
can't
don't.
be historically bad like they've been the last few games, but in general, I would say, like, if you look at how they were. So let's see, on Sunday they gave up 119 points. On Monday they gave up 120 points. Did they play Friday? Friday they gave up 119 to Brooklyn. I would say I don't expect that to totally continue. Or no, sorry, I read their score. They gave up 128 to Brooklyn. I'm not sure I expect that to continue. I would expect the players to maybe play a little bit harder for a new voice. Like we've seen that in Phoenix a little bit. Like they changed the rotation a little bit and players play a little bit differently. But I still think they'll be bad at defense. Like a lot of the reason they're bad at defense is because the players don't hustle. They don't, get back on defense like they should be. And I don't know that not George Karl is going to be good at that. Like whoever they replace George Karl with, whether it's Corliss Williamson or if they bring in like a full-time coach, like if George Karl couldn't get it to do it with like a full training camp, I don't know how another coach is going to get him to do it. Just, mid-season adjustments.
Well, yeah. I mean, and not only that, they have a couple guys who just are not good defenders anymore, and just
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that you can just teach or you can change a defensive scheme. But Rondo, I think at one point Rondo was a decent defender, but he's a disaster nowadays. And it's tough to say how much of that is just effort. But
well, and some of it is just the way they scheme, like they run their plays, and I guess that could get better. Like when they have Boogie Cousins up at the top of the key shooting 3-pointers, and all the other 4 guys below the foul line. Like, how are you going to run a transition D with that sort of a setup on offense? You've got Boogie Cousins basically supposed to be stopping the fast break, and all the other guys back. You're kind of designed for failure right there. So I guess stuff like that could change, but nothing I know about Corliss Williamson makes me think that he's some sort of NBA genius who's going to be able to solve.
Big Nasty. Oh, come on. He was a defensive beast.
It seems weird that like as many smart basketball people as there are, like Earl Watson, isn't he Phoenix's coach? And nothing against those guys necessarily, but I can't imagine that they're ready to be full-time. Like if I was a fan of Sacramento or if I was a fan of Phoenix and I was trying to win games, can you imagine having your side, the person in charge of your team be Earl Watson or Corliss Williamson, and the person in charge of the Spurs be Greg Popovich? Like you feel like you lose before you ever get started there.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly got to be disheartening if you're an actual fan of a team like Sacramento. I was looking at
like Sacramento, they've traded away all of their chance to win the lottery for the next like 3 seasons.
Again, it's a completely incompetent organization, and that starts at the top. So I was looking at Sacramento's defensive efficiency. Where do you think they rank in the NBA? I'm surprised that they're actually not lower than this.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like until a couple of like the last 3 or 4 games, they weren't awful like they've been the last 3 games. Yeah, I would say, like, are they 23rd?
Yeah, they're 24th.
Okay.
So teams that are worse than that. So Sacramento is 100. They give up they're 105.9 in defensive efficiency. I think that's how many points you would give up, like 100 possessions. Is how if that's how that stat works.
Yeah, that's how it works.
So So Houston doesn't surprise me. Houston's ranked 25th. The Bucks, how are the Bucks with that length and what was supposed to be a really good defensive team coming into the year? The Bucks are ranked 26th in defensive efficiency.
That is surprising, right? Because they
That's
were like
shocking to
second or
me.
third last season.
Dude, look when you have a lineup of MCW, Middleton, Giannis, I guess Jabari Parker, if we want to throw him in, then Greg Monroe. Like, those guys are all so long.
The problem is they haven't been able to necessarily play that lineup because there's no shooting. Like, I bet if we went and looked at the lineup data, I bet that lineup hasn't got on the court a lot.
I mean,
Jason Kidd's basically said it's unplayable right now.
Yeah, but still, that shocks me. I mean, the only teams worse than that are Brooklyn, New Orleans, Phoenix, and the Lakers. I remember last year in the playoffs, watching Milwaukee's defense they remind me of the 96 Bulls. They were everywhere with those long arms. So that's shocking.
Well, and then I'm not sure Parker and Monroe are the defenders that they had.
Oh, yeah, no. Season. I mean, Greg Monroe is an atrocious defender.
And, I don't think Parker's there yet either.
Yeah, I don't think Parker's that great either. But I mean, both those guys are at least long. At least Parker is. And I think it's one reason why Greg Monroe is allegedly being shopped around for trades. All right, so let's move. Let's get off of Sacramento and that debacle, and let's go to another coach, Mark, who got fired today.
Just quickly, I know we probably spent too much time on Sacramento, but to wrap that whole thing up, is there anybody that isn't playing in Sacramento now that if they got in the rotation, you would be kind of interested in? So I think Cousins, Gay, Rondo, they're all going to keep playing, but I'm talking about what if Carlson starts getting some minutes? What if Ben McLemore starts getting some minutes, or Cauley Stein, or Bellinelli?
Ben McLemore does not deserve to be no. Ben McLemore needs to be deported immediately.
He's from America, right?
I don't care. He needs to be brought up in the debates. He is a disgrace to watch. You talk about defense. Now he's the sole reason since he entered the NBA. One of the golden rules of DFS is that whoever's playing against Ben McLemore, you play that guy. They've given up. They've been ranked dead last and giving up the most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards for the last 3 to 4 years since he's come in the league. And Ben McLemore, another guy who, if you watch his stroke, he shoots beautifully. Mark, you think how can this guy miss? If at worst he'd be a 40% 3-point shooter. He can't make a dang thing. He's just a mess. So I can't stand that guy.
He seems like a guy who's gonna get chopped, axed out of Phoenix, or about Sacramento out of this whole thing, and then he's gonna show up in San Antonio next year.
I mean, maybe
an all-star.
But he's gotten 2 years or 2 or 3 years of too many chances. So no, that guy on no part of that bum. The guy who I kept on. I basically had this guy in 3 different leagues, and I finally dropped him in 2 of them. About a week and a half ago was Darren Collison. Yeah. I think Darren Collison's a better player than Rondo. He plays better defense. He's better in that locker room. He's a better leader on the court. I love Darren Collison. Now, I think unfortunately Vlade, the general manager, and Vivek, the owner, so I'm sure they'll make big nasties as well. They love Rondo, at least if you believe what you read in the Sacramento papers. So I think Rondo's going to keep getting minutes. But if Collison could somehow start getting a lot of minutes, I would love to play that guy. Pick up that guy in fantasy and play him in DFS. When he gets time, he's a fantasy point per minute monster.
He is. He absolutely is. He was in my I think he was in my top 50 last season. For that exact reason. All right, let's move on. Let's I guess go to the next coach firing.
Yeah, so
this is crazy. Can you imagine if in your line of work, if 20% of the people has been, isn't that right? 6 out of 30?
It's 1 out of 5. It's 20%.
20. Can you imagine if 20% of the people were fired already?
Yeah, but see, this is the difference, right? And I'd be fine with it if I got to keep my money. These people are making what? So what did George Karl sign? He probably signed a 4-year, $20 million deal,
probably,
which is guaranteed. So yeah, I don't feel too bad for these guys.
It's just crazy though. I can't believe how many, when they said today. Well, today they announced when not Barnes, Fisher got fired. That was the 5th coach. I couldn't believe it, but you and I counted up pre-show, and sure enough, there's been 5, and now there's been 6.
Yeah, no, it is insane. And to me, it's all about unrealistic expectations. And I don't think it helps when you have a guy like Steve Kerr coming into Golden State in his first year. They become like the greatest team of all time.
Why aren't you more like Steve Kerr?
Yeah, everyone's like, hey, look what Kerr did. So, but yeah, so Derek Fisher out of my my hometown city, or at least my adopted hometown city of New York City, they have fired Derek Fisher. I mean, didn't even make it a year and a half in New York, and his mentor Phil Jackson said you're out of here. Now the Knicks they started off the season playing pretty well, but they've lost 9 out of 10 games. So like I was like really shocked when I heard this news, and then throughout the course of the day reading various articles, a lot of people in, I guess, quote unquote, in the know weren't as surprised as me. What about you? What are your thoughts on this one? Were you surprised?
I mean, I think it was definitely surprising. I think those in the know people always say that afterwards.
You're telling me Ramona Shelbourne was lying to me, Mark?
I don't know. I mean,
Ramona wouldn't lie to me.
I'm not that surprised that it happened. Anyway, that's not important. The thing here that I don't get is, so again, I don't know that I necessarily agree that Derek Fisher is a good coach. In fact, I think the evidence suggests he's probably not a good coach. But
he's a horrible human being too.
If you knew that he was a bad coach, like I think there's been nothing that's happened since the beginning of the season that has convinced me he's worse than I thought he was at the beginning of the season. Like I feel like for the most part, the team has overperformed expectations. Like, they're 23-31. I think most people expected their win total to be under 30.
Well, no, so Mark, this was the problem. If you would have said before the year that was their record, I think most New Yorkers and Phil Jackson would have been like, "Well, that's not, that's okay." But they started out the season like much better than expected, and the fact that they've fallen off in these last 10 games, I think that's what's kind of made them they basically they recalculated where and they thought the team was better.
I would be surprised if Phil Jackson that's short-sighted, but maybe he is. And then look at the player development, like Porzingis has come along nicely. Carmelo's actually had a very promising year as far as transitioning into a player who's playing post prime. He's passing more, it feels like. I think the roster has come together pretty. I just feel like Derek Fisher hasn't done anything this season to deserve to be fired if he wasn't fired to begin the season. So if you knew that you were going to get rid of Derek Fisher, unless he did a miracle, why not just fire him anyway at the beginning of the season? Why go down this road? Why let him coach 50 games? Even if he outperforms expectations, even if they have players develop well, you still get rid of the guy. So I don't know. I'm kind of a weird place where I'm going I don't think he was a good enough coach to hang on to, but you hung on to him to start the season. So why not let him finish out the season? It was kind of like last year with Scott Brooks. Last year was the weird year with the Thunder where they didn't make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, because Durant was out,
Right. So Scott Brooks, in my opinion, and I think it's been well documented, I didn't think it was a very good coach. I thought he ran horrible sets, especially at the end of games.
He was like your Ben Wallace of coaching.
Yeah, basically. I posted videos of his end of game plays several times and how poorly they were won. But to me, why fire him after the season where they won so many games without Durant and Westbrook, right? There was nothing that you saw in that season that said he was or wasn't a good coach. So if you kept him for that season, why not keep him longer than that? It's almost like the timing of these I don't understand more than anything. If you thought Derek Fisher was a bad coach, fire him at the beginning of the season. Don't fire him after he outperforms expectations and players develop well. I just don't get it. But
yeah, I mean,
he's gone.
Yeah, this one I didn't really understand. I truly think that they saw what they thought was a weak Eastern Conference. They saw how they started the year. When you look at the Knicks team, they're not a bunch of young guys who they're trying to develop. You got a bunch of old timers. You got a bunch of senior citizens and Porzingis. You look at Calderon, who's 35, Afalo 31, let's say. Carmelo, a body of a 60-year-old. Robin Lopez, no spring chicken, and Porzingis, right? So when you look at it that way, that roster kind of is built to somewhat contend in that for a bottom playoff spot once they saw what they had in Porzingis. And I think that was Phil Jackson and the front office's perspective. So losing losing 9 out of 10, and now let me see how many games back they are of a playoff spot in the East. So now they're 4.5 games back. I think that was, clearly they want to go in a different direction. The other thing that I found was interesting listening to my girl Ramona Shelbourne was, so she was saying that they actually maybe I'm not quoting her like directly. I'm taking this from her and some other people who I heard today, and then read some other stuff that I read. I guess I didn't realize how pissed the Knicks were from the incident in the summer with Matt Barnes and Derek Fisher.
I didn't heard that either.
Yeah, and we all make fun of it, right? Because we think it's all funny. And then we saw today how Matt Barnes, posted that Instagram photo of him just like smiling and being all smug. Which I think, by the way, he should not be happy with this move. Worst thing that could have happened. Now, what does Derek Fisher have? He has more free time to spend with Matt Barnes' wife and Matt Barnes' kids. This is going to backfire for Matt Barnes. I'm telling you. Keeping Derek Fisher as a head coaching, that was the best, in the best possible scenario for Matt Barnes. So I don't know why he's was smiling, but I will say, so I guess New York, Phil Jackson, the front office, they were pissed. Like they thought about firing him just from that incident.
That's what I'm saying. So if that's why you're going to fire him at the beginning of the season. Don't wait until he wins more games than you expected and then fire him right before the All-Star break.
Yeah, no.
Unless you've got somebody lined up, like that's what I always think with these midseason things. Like the only reason there's any urgency to do it this year is if you've got hey, we've got Luke Walton, we're gonna sign him to a contract and we're gonna bring him in right now so that we don't have to worry about losing him in the offseason. But you're going to replace him with Corliss Williamson or whoever the Knicks have to replace him.
Well, the Knicks got our boy Rambis.
Oh, yeah, Kurt Rambis. Potentially the worst coach in NBA history.
Who's known, infamously for benching Kevin Love for 17 straight games. When Kevin Love was putting up 35 and 20 rebounds a game.
Is this really a better outcome than just letting Fisher finish the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Clearly, we're not behind the scenes, and we don't know exactly what was going on. But I saw some interesting things that were written about Fisher and Phil Jackson's relationship. How the Knicks weren't really sure Derek Fisher, was fully devoted to that team and was giving it his full attention, and so it was some pretty surprising things to read. And then that thing over the summer, that thing I guess kept looming over Derek Fisher's head, and they were pissed that he skipped a mini camp practice, to go hang with Matt Barnes' wife, and a bunch of weird stuff was coming out. So I don't know. But I mean, in terms of fantasy though, I am interested to see what Rambis is going to do, because they've lost, like I said, they've lost 9 out of 10. They do need to tweak some things. They have some young guys they could give more minutes to. Although one of those guys, Langston Galloway, was basically started, I think, 3 or 4 of the last 5 games and has played really poor. So that's not promising. So, but I am intrigued to see.
He's had some fantasy relevant minutes, but he's not. When you talk about Darren Collison and the fantasy points per possession studs, he's not on that list. Langston Galloway isn't. He's a guy that needs a lot of minutes to become just barely fantasy relevant.
Yeah, but last year, I mean, I played a lot of Galloway in DFS for there was a stretch when he was doing really well. I mean, he's got talent. I mean, if he was if he was starting,
remember the thing with DFS is they just have to outperform their salary, right? So
no, I know.
I mean, I don't think Langston Galloway is a guy who. Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think there's any scenario where he ends up as a top 75, top 60 player in standard leagues, even if he gets 32, 33, 34 minutes per game.
I think if him or Jeremiah Grant was getting that many minutes a game, if none of those bums if you're not getting 5 or 6 assists on a team that has Carmelo, and has other shooters like a Follow, come on. I think you clearly can carve out a niche to make yourself somewhat fantasy relevant.
Last season, per 36 minutes, he averaged less than 4 assists per game.
Well,
this season he's even lower. So I just don't think he's a passer.
Well, that's why for assists I mentioned Grant, because Grant is really the young point guard, and Galloway is really more of a 2 guard.
If Grant got some big minutes, I would be interested in that. if Kyle O'Quinn, I mean, we've all been waiting years for Kyle O'Quinn to get big minutes. I don't think it will ever happen, but Rambis has done stranger things, right? So
yeah,
I don't know that it's necessarily the smart play, but if he starts giving Kyle O'Quinn 24 to 26 minutes a game, he's a guy that you'd want to pick up. He's one of those fantasy points per possession monsters. He's going to help you across the board. Those are basically it. Like, it'll be interesting to see what he does with Robin Lopez. Robin Lopez can kind of go either way as far as being fantasy relevant or not fantasy relevant based on the minutes that you give him. And that's about it. I mean, that's really all I'm watching there with that Knicks situation. I hopefully he doesn't do. I guess that all we're doing, everybody collectively is holding their breath and hoping he doesn't do something to hurt Porzingis' development. Yeah, right. Like that would be the worst things if he starts benching Porzingis early or doing things that make it so Porzingis loses some confidence or loses, development time. I think that's the worst case scenario here with the Knicks.
Yeah, and really nothing would surprise me. As we've kind of already said, Rambis he was wacky when he coached, so I'm not. God only knows what the hell he's going to do with that team. I mean, I am interested to see what they do at point guard would be the main thing I'm looking for in terms of fantasy. So I just got a tweet, Mark. Shout out from Witness Whiteside, one of my loyal followers, who said, "You guys doing a show tonight? Tomorrow is an important day." What's tomorrow? Am I missing something? Is it the trade deadline in all our leagues? I tweeted him back, but he hasn't responded yet. I didn't think the trade deadline was yet in our league, so I don't know. Hopefully, I'm not missing anything.
I don't know. Is that the standard league trade deadline?
I don't know, because I'm looking at, I just logged into my accounts, and I don't have any trade deadlines tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
So anyway, should we move on to a non-coach firings?
Yeah.
Talk some players. Oh no! See, this is unfair. Mark, I need to tell a listener. So Mark will commonly send me links, like during the show. And I don't even know when you sent me this one. So I missed. Mark sent me a link. And then I open the link, and it'll be something like horrific, or it make me have a reaction, and then I sound like an idiot on the air. So I don't even want. Mark, what did you send me?
Open it up. It's Timothy Mozgov's. Mark Stein called it the dunk of the year.
All right.
You check it out. I'll read the next piece of news here. So, Marcus Gasol is dealing with a mid-right foot sprain, which caused him to leave Monday night's game. You can't play the audio in the background.
I'm trying to mute it, man. Like it came up with sound automatically. Nothing I could do.
It makes us sound like a Mickey Mouse.
That's your fault. That's what you get for sending me a link during the show. That is a fantastic dunk, though.
Marcus Gasol left Monday night's game with a mid-right foot sprain after 11 minutes. He did not return. It's the same foot issue that's been a problem for him over the last few games. It's unlikely that he'll play before the All-Star break, which sounds worse than it is. All-Star break is obviously coming up. There is games Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then that is the All-Star break. So let's see. I'm trying to look it up here. How many games does that even mean Memphis is missing? It might just be one, maybe two.
Yeah, I'm just scarred by that link you sent me. This is you make me like incompetent for like 5 minutes of the show.
It was a pretty good dunk, wasn't it?
It was fantastic.
Memphis here. Probably the best time that this injury could come from Marcus Gasol, really.
Yeah, but the problem of this, though, this has been bugging him for a while. I think
Memphis only has one more game.
Yeah, but this problem worries. I mean, this injury worries me, man. He's no spring chicken himself. He's kind of had a down year. I think a little bit. You don't think he has?
No, I said he certainly has.
So I don't know, like something like this. It concerns me for the rest of the season. And I sadly, in my most important league, I have this 7 foot. I was gonna say buffoon again, but he's not a buffoon. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I am a little concerned about this, and I am glad the All-Star breaks now so they can rest him. And I'm hoping that I'm looking at he's been playing a ton of minutes.
I think the rest is coming at the best possible time for Gasol. I think he could really benefit from a week or 10 days off. They would be smart to let him rest. And other news, Tobias Harris sat out on Monday night versus the Hawks. My boy Mario Hezonja got some run. He ended up playing 32 minutes, had 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 3-pointers, 3 assists. He shot 6 of 14, so wasn't shy in putting up the shots. He didn't get to the line at all, which is a little bit concerning to me. But overall, nice line out of Hezonja. Good to see that he has some promising stats to put up when he plays. Hopefully that leads to him getting some more minutes in the coming weeks.
Let's try to see if and actually a nice win for Orlando. Orlando they beat Atlanta. They beat Atlanta in overtime, 117 to 110. So
sort of surprising. They were down big early in this one.
Very surprising.
With Tobias Harris, I think that's the main beneficiary of Tobias Harris's minutes in this game. I don't know that's necessarily predictive of who's going to get minutes next game. They went with a shorter rotation a little bit. So Gordon played 28 minutes as a starter. Fournier played 42 minutes. Payton played 42 minutes. Vukovic played 44 minutes. He got 8 free throws. Daniel, you'll be proud of him.
That's got to be a misprint. That cannot be accurate.
Is that an error?
That has to be.
And that's basically their whole rotation. I mean, Jason Smith played 20 minutes off the bench. Hezonja played 32 minutes off the bench. And Napier got a few minutes. And that was it for the overtime game. That's a pretty short rotation.
So if you look at Atlanta's box score, does something kind of just leap off the page for you when looking at that? Because something does for me looking at Atlanta.
Why don't you tell us?
Kyle Korver, Mark. He actually
nice game.
He made 4 3-pointers. He shot 4 of 6 from 3-point land. It's a miracle. Honestly, he's become one of those guys. I now have a list of guys who play 30 minutes, and then like the end of the game, you look at the stat line, or just the end of the game, it comes and you go, dang, whatever happened to Joe Johnson or Kyle Korver or Taj Gibson or who else? Who's another guy? I had a nice list yesterday. But anyway, so Kyle Korver has been one of those guys this year, playing around 30 minutes, a little less, and just putting up nothing. But today, he finally, maybe his shot will actually start coming around the second half of the season.
I think you might be. I mean, he's definitely struggled from a value standpoint in fantasy, but I think you're being a little hard with the 3-pointers. He's made 3 3-pointers or more in 6 of his last 11 games. He's made three times. He's had 4 or more. So he's been hitting his 3-pointers, I would say, at a pretty regular basis. It's the other stuff that sort of surprises me that he racked up. And it's not like a ton of stuff, but he got 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. That seems like more than he's been doing in the last couple of games to me.
Yeah.
That could have been because he was matched up with Hezonja on the other side, though.
I'm sure that didn't hurt things.
That didn't hurt. All right, let's keep going here. Derrick Rose for Chicago was one of a myriad of players that set out. Chicago was obviously without Nikola Mirotic. Jimmy Butler was also out with a knee strain, and Derrick Rose just general soreness.
So can I tell a quick funny story about the Bulls? And this wasn't for this game. This was last week's game. And I'm gonna have to clean it up for the air, or for the podcast. So I can't say some of the terminology. So I get a text from a friend. This was, I think this was last week, who says to me. So I get a text just randomly. It's like 9:00 at night. Now, I think I was actually out at a work event or something. And the text says, "Can you believe the Bulls have," and then a word that starts with an F and ends with an O, and it because of autocorrect, my friend was trying to type in the name of this player who I'm just going to read. I'm going to spell out the name because I don't want to even try to pronounce it. Felicio. So when my friend texted me, "Can you believe the Bulls have this player?" It switched to another word, Mark, and a kind of a graphic term. You know where I'm going with this or no? I mean,
That's one of the worst stories you've ever told on the podcast.
Really? I mean, so no, because when I got the text, I turned like completely pale white, like a ghost, because it made like no sense, right? Anyway,
Okay.
but my point is, that's how bad the Bulls have become because they have players we've never even heard of anymore.
Yeah, if you and I haven't heard of the player's name, that's pretty bad.
Right, and I had no idea who that guy was, like none, until last week.
Yeah.
But and also like look at who like you said, a myriad of players sat out, but look who the Bulls started tonight.
Their starting lineup: Pau Gasol, obviously, Etuan Moore, Mike Dunleavy, Taj Gibson, and Kirk Thomas.
You mean Kirk Heinrich?
I'm sorry. What did I say?
Kirk Thomas.
Oh my goodness! Can you imagine? It might as well start Kirk Thomas.
Who the hell is Kirk Thomas? I don't even know who that is. You make that up?
No, he played in the NBA. I think I said Kirk.
Oh, you mean Kirk Thomas?
He played on the Bulls a couple of years ago.
Totally different looking guys, though.
They played there.
But they both were as slow as an ox, and we're both like 74 years old. But yes.
Yeah. Other than that, there's not very many similarities. I'm sorry. Heinrich played. Pau Gasol had an awesome game. 22 points, 3 3-pointers, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. Other than that, they pretty much got their clocks cleaned by Charlotte. Nobody else performed at a very high level. Etuan Moore, actually, for him, had a pretty good game. 12 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block to go along with 3 3-pointers.
Like I feel bad for one of our listeners because he did a no halftime contest with Norris Cole versus Etuan Moore.
Uh-huh.
And he thought he was going to dominate because he had Norris Cole.
Well, I think we thought he was going to dominate, too.
We did, too. And it was the one game where Norris Cole went like 1 for 12 and did nothing, and then Etuan Moore, because he's starting and putting up good numbers when the Bulls have no one playing. So I think he lost that challenge. But Etuan Moore is actually a decent guy to target right now with the Bulls this banged up in DFS and in no halftime. Shockingly. The fact that I'm saying that out loud is just that tells you how far the Bulls have fallen. Man.
Dan, speaking of no halftime, I think it's time for us to give our friends at No Halftime a mention here on our podcast.
No halftime.
Obviously, our good friends at No Halftime, we thank them for sponsoring the podcast. And this is about the time of the show where we like to do a segment where we highlight players to target in No Halftime and players to avoid or to go. So I guess you could say target both ways, right? Target to go against and target to be on your team in DFS or in no. Oh man, I'm struggling in no halftime.
I got you. I was with you.
Ugh. Words sometimes are not my forte. So just to remind everybody, No Halftime is a easy to use iTunes app that allows you to compete in player versus player fantasy sports challenges. So I pick a player, Daniel picks a player. My player would obviously be better, and so they would win. And then Daniel has to send me money. And No Halftime handles all of that for us. And as Daniel mentioned at the beginning, use the promo code BBALL, BBALL, for free $25. This might be one of the last shows where that promo code is offered.
Take advantage of it, man.
Yeah, so take advantage. Free $25. Though that doesn't money doesn't grow on trees anymore like it used to.
Ain't that the truth, man? Ain't that the truth?
So who are you thinking that you want to either target to go for or against in No Halftime?
Why don't we take advantage of this Marc Gasol news, who's going to be out at least one game?
Okay.
Let's go little Zach Randolph.
He has been playing really well, really, really well lately.
He has, and those minutes are going to be up the next game or two, however long he gets to play without Marc Gasol. Tonight, without Gasol, 40 minutes, 26 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, which is an added bonus. So he's a sneaky player right now to gobble up in something like in a no halftime, and even in DFS where his price has dropped a lot.
And he scored 20 points and grabbed 14 rebounds in their previous game against Dallas. He only had 10 and 4 the game before that, but the game prior to that game, he had 22 points and 12 rebounds. So that's 3 out of 4 games where he scored at least 20 points and had at least 9 rebounds. So I agree. I think he is a sneaky, like for all those people that aren't paying real super close attention right now to the box scores, I think he's somebody because generally a pretty consistent producer, right?
Yep.
Like old player. He's not a rookie. There's no new situation or system, but he's just playing a little better right now. So I think that's the type of guy you want to catch people off guard with.
And one guy, Mark, that I want to attack right now in no halftime.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That's Lou Williams.
Okay.
So Lou Williams now, and I think I tweeted this out, and I mentioned you in my tweet. I'm telling you, I don't think you're on board with me yet, but you will be, man. I'm going to get you there. D'Angelo Russell is going to become fantasy relevant in standard leagues before the season is out. Byron's, has already said that D'Angelo's going to be starting after the All-Star break, and he's going to be, playing, a lot of minutes, especially down the stretch, which he has not done a lot of this year. What does that mean? That means fewer minutes for Lou Williams, if Lou Williams doesn't even get traded. But there's really no reason to give Big Lou or Little Lou a lot of run these days. Plus, Lou Williams has been struggling with a shot anyway. So that's a guy that I'm looking to target right now on something like no halftime. Now,
remember, my take with Russell is basically just I think he will have good stretches and bad stretches. I don't think the environment and development there is there for him. I don't think the structure is there for him to consistently to be in a situation where he's consistently putting up good numbers. But I think he's a talented player. I think he'll have stretches. I just worry about the consistency of the minutes and of the support he's getting from his.
Plus, I think
from the players around him and from the coaching.
Well, I think it's going to be fascinating from just to watch what Byron Scott does, because now basically the word is out of Los Angeles is that Byron Scott knows he has like a 2-month audition to try to get the job for next year. And if you speak to the people, who kind of in the Lakers or the LA media, a lot of them say that Byron still has a pretty good shot to get that job next year. Now there's a lot of talk about them trying to go for Luke Walton, but a lot of people think that Byron, which probably correctly so, hasn't got a legitimate shot out there because he had to deal with frickin' Kobe the last 2 years, who has sabotaged, his entire, tenure there. So Byron knows he has 2 months to show what he can do, and all the Laker fans care about are developing Russell and Randall. So I expect him to do everything he can to put Randall and especially Russell in successful situations out there.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. All right, let's move on. One of our final notes here. Festus Ezeli had arthroscopic surgery to clean out debris from his left knee and will be reevaluated in 6 weeks.
Yeah, so he should be back for the real playoffs, but probably not for the fantasy playoffs. Not that he's probably ready anyway.
Not that you totally care in a standard league about Festus Ezeli, but
no.
Potentially interesting for Bogut if that means Bogut has to play a few more minutes.
I mean, Ezeli's been out enough already, and haven't we seen enough of Bogut? You know what Bogut's going to give you? He's going to give you 5 fouls. That's what he's going to give you. He's going to give you 12 minutes and 5 fouls. I mean, dear God, every game the dude's in foul trouble, no matter who they're up against.
He knows that they can't carry over. There's no rollover fouls. Like if you don't use your fouls in one game, you lose them.
It's just every game with that guy. Just painful.
He's actually, of the players, like we talk about point per possession or production per possession monsters, he's one of those guys. Like if he ever got enough minutes, he would be a super relevant player, but it just is never going to happen. They're never going to play him more than the 20 minutes a game that he plays.
If you had to choose, if there's one game for all the marbles, and Bogut was matched up against Kyle O'Quinn, who would fall out first?
That's a great question.
It would be just neck and.
Can we do that as a no halftime challenge?
If we do it
based on their fouls.
If we do it in fouls, I'll do it. Otherwise, O'Quinn's not getting enough minutes, so I'd still pick Bogut. That would be sweet. You know what would be sweet if no halftime could do though? You could just pick you could focus in on one specific category.
Yeah, that would be fun. Like
who's gonna have
me versus you, Bogut, or me versus you, Bogut, and Kyle O'Quinn for fouls.
Yeah, it would be awesome. Just pick back in the day, like Kobe versus someone in pure scoring or field goal attempts or something crazy like that. It'd be cool.
You could do Kobe present day in field goal attempts versus almost anybody in the league.
That is true. You could do who's gonna have more assists, Rubio or Rondo. Things like that would be cool. I'm telling you, me and you should make an app like that.
Yeah, we'll just have to go to app school to learn how to design apps. I don't think either of us. As far as I can tell, you barely know how to turn on a computer at this point of your life.
That's so unfair. I mean, but it's kind of accurate as well.
And I'm not sure if I'm above or below you on the computer aptitude scale, but I think we're bunched together in basically the same spot.
I think I was born like 5 years too. Is it too late or too early?
Too early.
Too early for to be a complete computer literate. I just missed it. I just missed it.
Yeah. So did you grow up with a computer or no?
No, I did, but so I remember the first computer we got. It was when I was.
Yeah. How old were you?
I must have been a teenager.
See, I think maybe I was 4 or 5 when we got our first.
Yeah, I was like 12 computer. Or 13. Maybe a little bit younger, but and the one we got, it was a monster. It took up an entire room.
It was pre-internet, there's not I don't even know what we did with it, right? Like there was accounting software on it probably, and one game.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember a specific game you played?
Well, and I think I'm technically counted in the millennials generation, but I call my generation the Oregon Trail generation. There was a very specific amount of. There was 3 years where everybody in the country played Oregon Trail. And, with the stupid little floppy disk that you had to flip over in the middle of the game. And we did it at school for some reason. They had it they thought that was an important part of our education, that everybody in the country played the same computer video game. And if you talk to anybody who was born in basically 2 years before me or 2 years after me, we all played Oregon Trail, and then nobody else played it at school.
I played Oregon Trail.
Really? At school?
Yeah, not at school, no.
Yeah, you played it at home. There's a slice of the country that's my age that played it during school. They took us into the little computer room, and they sat us all down in groups of 2 or 3.
That's creepy.
Are you sure? No, everybody I've ever talked to who's basically my exact same age, we all went and hunted with the same. The listeners can back me up. The ones that are my age, you went and shoot the little animals with your guns, and I have no idea why that was part of our education, but we went and did that in the computers basically every week. Okay, back to last note that I wanted to share, and then we'll wrap up here on the podcast. Chris McCullough, the rookie in Brooklyn, made his NBA debut. He was touted as being a player that would be considered for being drafted in the lottery before he hurt his knee in college. Brooklyn picked him anyway at pick 29. He's rehabbed, he's fully recovered, and now he's going to start playing for Brooklyn. I can't say that I know a lot about McCullough. I did translate his college stats to NBA stats, and he seems like a guy who could actually have some value in the steals and blocks categories right off the bat, and eventually maybe have some value in the points and rebounds categories, although that I don't think will happen right away. I don't think he's going to be a standard league relevant type of player, at least this year, but it's worth knowing his name just because Brooklyn doesn't have, they're not, I don't know what's going on in Brooklyn that you would look forward to, but Chris McCullough might be their only interesting young player. They don't have any lottery picks coming up for the next 5 or 10 years. They don't have any good young players. And so as far as lottery talent on their team that's relatively young, he's pretty much it. He and Rondé Hollis Jefferson. And we know that Rondé Hollis Jefferson has sort of a ceiling on his potential. So McCullough just by default is sort of the bright spot on their roster of young players who have potential. And by virtue of that alone, I think that he may get some minutes in Brooklyn, so they can see what they have with the guy. Certainly don't know what he'll produce, but I think it's like I said, it's worth knowing his name in case things take a turn for the best in Brooklyn for him. Do you have any thoughts about McCullough or no?
No, as I told you pre-show, I know nothing about that guy, except from like the few things that I read when I saw he's gonna get some minutes. So yeah. Only thing I have to add is I can't believe you didn't mention Markel Brown or Bogdanovich when you were talking about some Brooklyn talent.
Really, I mean that's the only reason this is interesting, right? Is there's just not a lot of young talent there. They have a couple of players in their individual primes, right? In Brook Lopez and Thaddeus Young, and they have a couple of players past their prime like Jared Jack and Joe Johnson. And then the talent is pretty weak there. They have some marginal players. So for them to have a player on their team that has some promise and some upside and some ceiling, like what else are they going to sell to their fans? It might be Chris McCullough. As sad as that sounds, that might be their best selling point at this, with their fans at this point in the season.
Yeah, what they sell or need to sell some dang reduced ticket prices. That's what they need to sell.
Yeah, exactly. If Chris McCullough is your franchise future,
and even Hollis Jefferson, I mean he's going to be a nice role player, but
right. That's what I'm saying. With Hollis Jefferson, he's their other young player, but we know exactly what you're saying. Like he's at best going to be a role player. At least Chris McCullough is unknown at this point,
right?
Right? Like, at least they can tell people, oh, he had lottery talent and he just didn't get picked high because he was injured. And maybe that's true or maybe that's not. But at least they can sort of sell that. Like I said, I didn't, his college stats leave a lot to be desired as far as traditional like points, rebounds, and assists categories. But he does seem like a guy, he played at Syracuse. He seems like a guy who could get a lot of production in the blocks and steals categories. Sort of like a very, I think our old friend Kyle compared him to Nerlens Noel, and that's probably a pretty accurate, a poor man's Nerlens Noel, and that's probably a pretty accurate comparison based on the stats work I've done.
Speaking of Brooklyn, Mark.
Yes.
I'm going to give you some quick trivia.
All right.
And that is, over the last 10 seasons, because this has to do with Brooklyn, I'll give you a hint. Who has made the most buzzer beaters in the NBA?
Well, I know that Joe Johnson made a very impressive buzzer beater on Monday night.
Bank shot 3 to beat Denver 105-104.
And it wasn't one of those bank shot 3-pointers where they ended up winning by 3 points. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, no. They were down too.
Yeah. It's a buzzer beater, but if he didn't make it, they were going to overtime. Like this was, if he didn't hit that 3-pointer, then they lose the game.
Now, do you think his pulse changed at all? Did it elevate? Did it get a spike at all when that shot went in?
It's like if you were watching the little green, exactly. The green line. It was it was a flat line and then just a little boop.
Yeah,
and then flat line.
Yeah, I don't even know if there was a little boop. It stayed flat, I think. Oh, but no, you're right. So Joe Johnson was number one.
He got a little excited that it might go in. Boop. And that was it. Joe Johnson.
Yeah, Joe Johnson, you're correct. He's first.
I don't think I would have ever guessed that before you gave me the Brooklyn hint.
Like the thing is, he's been playing so long. I remember like 20 years ago, he didn't make a lot of clutch shots. So I guess it wasn't 20 years though. So yeah, he's number one. He's hit 7 game winners in the last 10 years. All right, so I only have the top number 2 and number 3. Who do you think number 2 and number 3 are?
LeBron.
You'll never get these.
Kobe, LeBron, Damian Lillard.
No. Okay, this guy used to play on Golden State.
Monte Ellis?
Yeah, Monte Ellis is second. Actually, there's a tie for second. Actually, both these guys, one currently plays for Golden State and one used to play for Golden State. So Monte Ellis has 4 game winners in the last 10 years.
Sean Livingston?
No.
Andre Iguodala.
Yeah, Iguodala 4. There you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, not guys that I would have thought for sure.
All right. Is that all your trivia, or did you have one other? I thought.
No, that's it. But like when you think about it, so Kobe hasn't had 4 game winners in the last 10 years.
It seems like a very specific. Like, is it only counting the shots that went up and then the buzzer sounded and then?
I don't know. I don't have that kind of detail.
I wonder if that's
maybe that's why.
because you'd think that Kobe's taken like 50 game-winning type
At
shots, and
least,
even if he's made 10 of them,
all right,
he would be on the list, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
So no other trivia, huh? That's it.
No, well, I mean, I do have the local TV ratings came out today. So
Okay.
you want to take a guess at who do you
I would
think
guess LA.
the top 5 local markets are?
LA, New York.
New York's not on there.
Really?
And LA's not on there either.
Because those two have the biggest TV deals, as far as I know. So I would guess they have the
Right. So if
biggest
you're talking just average audience size, the Knicks would be second, and the Lakers would be fifth.
So what are you measuring?
Just like a local rating.
Oh, so and how it compares to like the other shows that are happening there?
Yeah, basically yes.
So is it sort of normalized? Like the
Yeah,
Jazz have just as good of a chance
correct.
as being there as the Lakers do?
Correct.
So these are like the most rabid fan bases.
Yes. There you go. That's a good way of saying it.
What, is Utah up there? I would guess that Utah is up there.
I only have the top 5 and the bottom 5.
Okay.
Utah is not top 5 or bottom
5. Who loves their basketball? Indiana?
No. So top 5 is Cleveland is first, San Antonio is second, Golden State is third, OKC is fourth, and fifth is shocking though.
I should have just guessed the 4 best records in the NBA, huh?
Basically, but take a stab at fifth, like a team you wouldn't.
Memphis.
No, Miami.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to tell you. These Brooklyn. Are the teams with the biggest changes from last year.
Well, who's in the bottom? I want to know who's in the bottom 5. Is Brooklyn in the bottom 5?
The ratings?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brooklyn's last.
That's what I would have guessed.
Yeah, so Brooklyn is last. Denver's 29th. Washington is ranked 28th. Charlotte is 27th, and Philly is 26th. But when you look at the teams that have the biggest changes from last year to this year, so Golden State has 120% increase.
Nice.
In viewership. Orlando, an 83% change.
They've won impressive. A couple of games this season.
I mean, yeah, that's a big change. Good for Scott Skiles. This one surprised me. Philly is number 3 in ratings change with a 45% increase.
I'll tell you what, if we ranked NBA teams on who, like, if I want to just watch a game for fun,
yeah,
and we're measuring the team, I don't think Philly would be in my bottom 10. I actually like watching Philly a lot of the time. I think they usually play hard and they have interesting players.
They do play hard. They're in a lot of close games.
And Brett Brown is a good coach, so they run good sets. Schemes, and they run good offensive sets. They run good defensive schemes. Like, I don't think they're terrible to watch. Now, they wouldn't be in my top 10 either, but I don't think they'd be in my bottom 10 teams of guys I don't want to watch.
I actually agree with you that I don't mind watching a Philly game, except I do watching Stauskas play. That is tough. That's tough. That's the only thing about watching Philly that I can't stand. All right. Lastly, I'm going to do this one. So this is keeping with teams that have had the biggest change from last year to this year, but this is a negative change. So change for the worse. So the teams that have lost viewers the most.
Is Houston on there? Phoenix on there?
Nope.
Really?
So the bottom 5. So the Bulls.
Brooklyn. Oh.
The Bulls have lost 29% of viewership this year.
Wow.
Dallas has lost 29% viewership. Mark Cuban cannot be happy at that one. Atlanta. Remember, Atlanta came off that tremendous season last year. This year,
that's who I should have guessed.
Underperformed a little bit. So they've lost 33% of their viewership.
Their fans are basically the Joe Johnson of NBA fans.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. That's always been that way with them.
Yeah.
They might be the worst fan base in the NBA.
Yeah.
So the New Orleans Pelicans are 29th. They've also lost a third of their viewers. Who do you think is last? This one surprised me. It's another team has taken. They're in the East, and they definitely have taken a step back this year. They were pretty good last year.
Washington. I mean,
we
talked about them already.
Yeah, the Wizards. Yeah, well, Washington has lost 34% of their viewers from last year.
Well, that's too bad. John Wall. You should be enjoying John Wall's years, regardless of everything else going on. Like, he's worth turning on the TV to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, they found. I mean, I think they were battling for the 3 or 4 spot last year, and then to not even be in the playoffs this year. So.
Yeah.
And speaking of coaching changes, that could be number 7 is Dim Whitman.
Well, that's what's crazy here, right? Like, if you were to name the worst coaches in the NBA before we started the season, I mean, Whitman would be up there. Byron Scott would be up there. Sam Mitchell would be up there.
Yeah, I mean, the problem you have is Sam Mitchell. That's a.
I would put Hoiberg up there now. That is not to say he won't develop, but I think Hoiberg and Donovan could both be close, close if not in that top 5, and all of those guys still have their jobs. So it's crazy that we fired 7 other coaches in the NBA and not those 5.
Okay, I don't know if the listeners caught that. Mark just said he basically wants Hoiberg. Or no, not Hoiberg. You wanted Billy Donovan fired.
No, I didn't say I wanted him fired. I said I think
put him in top 5 worst coaches in the league.
Yeah, I think he has been. That's not to say like he's a new coach, so it makes sense why he hasn't been fired. And like hopefully for OKC's sake, he develops and becomes a better coach. But I think at least in the OKC games that I've watched this season, he's been not a good coach. He looks like he's playing checkers against somebody who's playing chess. And I think if they struggle to advance in the playoffs, I think that's as big of a reason as any, because they're certainly as talented of a team as anybody in the West.
Do you think after 1 year they could actually let him go? There's no.
That's like listen what I'm saying. I don't necessarily think he should be fired. I'm just saying I don't think he's a good coach right now. Like it's sort of like a player, right? Like Chris McCullough probably shouldn't. He's probably not a very good NBA player, but Brooklyn should be playing him to see what they get out of him.
Yeah,
I think Billy Donovan could be in a similar situation. I think the transition from college to NBA is really tough. I think that's why it's risky. It made no sense for the OKC to hire that guy when your last year of Durant. You're going to start with a rookie coach.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's in a really tough spot. He's in a similar spot to what Blatt was in for Cleveland. I mean,
yeah,
what can he really say? Where Durant and Westbrook are going to be, they're probably looking at him like, "Are you kidding me? We're going to do what we want to do." So
exactly.
That's got to be a difficult situation.
Like it almost should have, and I don't know that I don't think George Karl would have been a great fit in OKC, but he seems like the type of coach. It seems like they should have gone after that type of a coach, like a veteran coach who has coached in the NBA before and could have the potential to pick up NBA coaching and do well in their first year. And it seems like Sacramento should have picked a younger coach to build along with. Like the choice from Billy Donovan seems curious to me. And if you're going to give, and again, back to the whole timing thing, and we don't need to harp on this anymore, but if you're going to give Billy Donovan a year to break into the NBA, don't you do it last season when it was basically a throwaway season?
Yeah, I mean, the timing makes no sense. You think that they consulted Durant and Westbrook and they were gung-ho about getting Billy Donovan, which doesn't seem that likely.
Yeah.
Or they've kind of come to the realization that we're probably going to lose one or both these guys, and we want a young coach or youngish.
We want somebody to cover the transition period.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean.
And that makes a lot of sense. If that's what's going on, I think the move makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be interesting to see, in 2 years from now, who does OKC have? Do they have Durant? Do they have they have Durant? They have Westbrook? They have Durant and Westbrook, or they have neither?
Yeah, and you talk about ratings decreasing, right? Can you imagine OKC's ratings without those two?
Well, see,
I could get ugly really quick.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think of OKC kind of like Sacramento and those teams they're always going to have a good home crowd because what else is there to do in OKC?
I don't know. If you've had Durant for 10 years and that's all you've known, and now you're watching it's not waiters throw up shots.
Yeah, I think it's not like this is LA or Miami where they can go, do something really exciting. What are they going to do? And I don't want to upset anyone who lives in OKC, but I'm sure there's not, too thrilling of a nightlife there. Yeah. That's the big thing, to go to a Thunder game.
Yeah. I don't know how you watch that. I remember Kyle talking about he living in Detroit and trying to watch Lions games after Barry Sanders was there and just being like, I have no interest in this.
Yeah.
And all right, Daniel. I think we covered the fantasy landscape for Tuesday night. I think are we going to be back with another show? The Super Bowl kind of funked up our schedule this week. Do you want to do another show tomorrow night? We're going to get...
Why are you putting the pressure on me? Of course I want to do a show tomorrow night.
All right. So we'll be back with a Wednesday show, and then we'll also be back with a Friday show this week. I think the Friday show is going to be I don't know exactly what form it's going to take, but it's going to be a trade deadline show of some kind.
Yeah, is the deadline the 19th or the 18th? Is that when the deadline is?
I think so. Whatever day is the Thursday.
And we also, though, on Friday, on one of these shows, we'll get to learn what Mark's going to do for Valentine's Day, because that's coming up on Sunday.
You too, right?
I'm just going to be with my dog. That's what we're going to be doing. Me and
Say
my
no
dog.
more.
Exactly.
No, I don't know if we're going to be talking about fake trades or if we're going to be talking about like teams that are likely to make trades and players you might want to stash. It's going to be centered around NBA trade deadline. So if you have comments or questions or trade suggestions, it might be a combination of all those things, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
I like to play with the trade machine from time to time, so I think that could be fun.
Like, what better thing is there to do during a boring meeting at work than to play with a trade machine?
I love when I get like 4 team trades with 30 players going through, and I like this could work. It
is always super exciting when you get one that actually like makes fiscally it works, and then you're like, why? And then you want to send it. You actually like want to send it to a GM,
right?
Now knowing that you actually have a relationship with Daryl Morey from Houston, do you ever think about, hey, I have his email?
No.
I'm telling you, they do need to make a trade, Mark. This could be your in.
I still think the trade is Dwight Howard to Cleveland makes a lot of sense.
And who's Cleveland giving up?
I don't know. See, this is where I get hung up, but I think it's Kevin Love, but I think that's not a fair trade. I think 5 years of Kevin Love for 1 year of Dwight Howard is a pretty poor trade. So there's got to be more to it than that. But I don't know if you could, like, if you start piecing together other things, like if you put Ariza in the deal as like a solid wing defender who shoots 3-pointers and maybe like one other nice piece, I think maybe you've got something. Maybe you take like Varejão's terrible contract off of or no, that's the wrong way. Shoot, I don't know.
I think you just.
I'm gonna have to keep going there, but I think Dwight Howard to Cleveland makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you think they would do everything they can to trade Dwight, because that's not going to work. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it wouldn't take Kevin Love. Maybe all they'd have to do is take like Mozgov and a couple of expiring contracts and like one promising future piece, like a future draft pick, and they could get Dwight Howard. Like, I don't know what Dwight Howard's price is at this point. Anyway, we'll talk more about that on Friday. That will be our Friday show. Tomorrow we'll be back with a normal show talking about all things fantasy. Maybe there'll be 2 more coaches fired by then.
Probably.
Jeez. What a bad business.
No, anytime you start feeling bad for them, just remember guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
Remember that. Although if there is, I'm trying to think who would be the next coach to be fired. I don't know.
All right, man. Until tomorrow night, or I guess until tomorrow morning, whenever you're listening to it, until Wednesday.
Honestly, you have to admit, like and let me ask you a serious question. How long have you been trying to end this podcast?
I just don't want it to end.
I know. I can sense you're like torn. A part of you has been dying to end it. The other part of you seems to kind of want it to keep going.
Yeah.
You're very conflicted over there.
All right. Until Wednesday. Go enjoy some basketball, friends. We'll see you later.
Later.